Hello, everyone. Welcome. Mark, I see you on my screen. Can you hear me okay? You can't see me, right? Okay. Something happened in my video, which is always so much fun. Hopefully it'll
No,
magically start
we
working.
we hear you.
Okay, good. I keep stopping it and starting it. I'm just not going to mess with it.
Yeah, don't.
Hopefully it'll magically appear.
Yeah, at the end.
Yes. I'll say, hi, everyone. I will try one more time. Yep, I don't know. I don't know what happened to me. I'm just a dark screen.
We just saw your logo.
Yeah. It says my virtual background is loading, so maybe it'll figure it out. Well, welcome everyone. I'm still accepting some people in today. Sorry, we're running a couple minutes late. I was on 20 minutes ago and everything was working beautifully, and then all of a sudden it decided to stop working.
Kim, it might have just started when I logged in because we're under the same account.
Oh,
I'm gonna
I'll
bump out and see if that helps.
oh, that's okay. And figure out how to cut this from the recording. Okay, it's wonderful to see all of you who I've been emailing with. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to try to accept people and get us started as time is of the essence, and we only have precious 60 minutes together. So, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for the first session of our LCAN 101 series. I'm Kimberly Krupa with FCAN. I'm sorry you can't see me. Something happened to my video. Maybe it will appear, but regardless, here I am. I'm so thrilled to kick off this journey with you. It's actually back by popular request. We have had 4 series of LCANs over the years, starting in 2018, but we haven't had one in 2.5 years, and the world has changed. So we're really excited to introduce this to our network, to meet some new friends. Welcome back those of us who have been in the movement for many years, and get us started on what the world looks like now in college access and success in Florida. We do have a few housekeeping notes. We'll be using the chat actively throughout the session, so please keep that chat window open. Um, Absolutely ask questions as we go. We can all agree to pause often for discussion and Q&A. Um, I am recording the first hour, but I like to always stay on after. So what I'll do is I'll close the recording and then just hang out for however long you guys want to. Any questions, maybe that you didn't have a chance to ask or get answered, or you want to debrief on anything, that time is really for you. And then we will share the recording, the slides, the resources, the show notes, and you'll get the AI transcript right after, but I'll send all of that out next week, early next week. All right, well, welcome. Here is what we're going to cover today. I try to divide this into 5 parts, and we'll start with you all. Get ready to put your first information into the chat. So hearing which area of Florida you're representing, which region, if you know your LCAN, if you don't have an LCAN, your county and your organization. We'd love to hear from all of you and what brings you here today. Then we'll kind of set the stage by talking about like why now? It's October. What's happening that makes this work pretty urgent at the moment. And we'll also give you an overview of the series, but then our main content today is really about the evolution of the college access network movement in Florida, lessons learned from 12 years of doing this work, and then looking at some real examples around the state of some model approaches that we can all take inspiration from. After that, we'll have some reflection. How did that go? This is where we really want to hear from you. So be thinking about, does that make sense for my community? What questions does this raise for your network? And then finally, we'll look ahead to November session and make sure you have the resources and prep materials you need. Again, for those of you just joining, I'm sorry you can't see me. I am here, but for some reason my video decided to stop working. So hopefully it will come back on before we end here today. So before we move forward, let's hear from you. Your first chat prompt, very easy one, your name, the county or the region that you represent, knowing that the county you live in might not be the county you're representing today. If you know your LCAN, wonderful. If not, the organization that you're representing. And I'll give it a few minutes to let your answers come in. Welcome. We've got Central Florida well represented in our first group. Wonderful. It's so awesome to see so many of you here. Oh, hi, Megan. I love your answer. Welcome. Hi, Jackie. Yes, I am recording too. I forgot to answer you today. And I have some colleagues on the call as well. I thought, Dave, you were going to call yourself a Florida man from FCAN, but that'll do. So take a look at this map on your screen. And this is a snapshot of our current local college access network from the Panhandle to South Florida, rural to our largest metro areas. Each of them represents something really different and really powerful. It's people and organizations coming together. We've got all types of sectors represented here. And the glue holding it all together is that shared commitment to helping students get to and through college and career. So here's what we do know about this network approach is that it's not one single organization that can do all of this. So it's not the school district, it's not the state college, it's definitely not the nonprofit sector. But we think that networks hold a key to the puzzle. And that when we work in true collaboration, that's sort of the power that I think you see on this map and that we're going to explore through this learning series. Just added up all the numbers. This is true, representing the majority of our population, but still you see some gaps on the map. The gaps are the white counties that are not shaded lime green. And what we want to do is not necessarily fill in every county, but we really want to grow and strengthen the existing movement. And then where it makes sense, take on additional local college access network work, but also thinking about who in those counties that's not on the map is also doing the work and how do we kind of bring them into our fold. Another thing that we've seen is that being in LCAN is contagious. So if you have one in a major metro area, they tend to leapfrog around and it grows like osmosis. Except for the LCAN that I started in 2016, which is Achievas Gambia, that has not been able to leapfrog. So I would say that's the exception to the rule. And maybe Tallahassee a little bit, but I think you're growing and stretching out beyond that 3-county area. So let's talk about kind of how we got here and why this matters so much. We are calling this series Talent Strong Florida because that's exactly what we think is at stake. That this is about building a talent pipeline that will really predict and determine our economic future as much as it is serving the current generation of students. And on the next slide, we'll show you 3 numbers that if you don't remember anything from today, maybe you'll remember these 3 numbers. They kind of frame everything that we'll discuss through May. But first, think about your recent conversations with students or families, and what are you hearing out there right now? What's the number one barrier that you're hearing kind of right from the source's mouth about going to college? What are some barriers that are popping up for you? And go ahead and put those into the chat. And I will attempt to turn my video off and on again. No, I'm still not working. I should say you can always unmute and contribute as well if you don't feel like writing. Selfishly, I like writing because I can just copy the chat in my show notes, but I also love hearing your beautiful voices. So we'll take whatever form you want to show up in. Yeah, hearing those barriers loud and clear. So I promised you 3 numbers. Many of you could probably answer the quiz about what 60% is. That's our Sail to 60 goal, our Florida 2030 goal, that 60% of working age Floridians should hold a high value post-secondary credential by 2030. This is the legislation from 2019 that specifically names FCAN as a partner in hitting this target. And today, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, we're at 55%. That includes degrees and credentials, and that means we have 5 years to close a 5-point gap. 65% is how many jobs the Georgetown Center predicts will require post-secondary education also by 2030. So even if we hit that 60%, we'll still fall short of what our economy is demanding. And 72%, a little bit grimmer, by 2031, just 6 years from now, Georgetown's predicting 72% of jobs will require post-secondary credentials. And so every percentage point that we see here represents, for our state, tens of thousands of Floridians and also their economic futures and their families. I'm curious, of these numbers, which one surprises you? And are these numbers that you use or have seen in your work, out in your communities? And again, chat is great, and also unmute. Does any of that surprise you so far? I just saw your comment, Leah. I feel like you were talking about my son. Awesome. So again, you'll get the sources and all the show notes for all the slides in the recap. But I have 2 more statistics to share with you. And if you've heard those 3 numbers, then you've probably heard about Florida's Future Billions, the Helios Education Foundation's report that came out almost exactly 12 months ago. And it also shows what's at stake. And I love this report. I think many of us do because it's so tangible. It shows that a 10% increase, if we increase college enrollment by just 10%, we add 8.4 billion annually. 20% in completion, just degree completion alone, adds an additional 7 billion every year. And so those are even more students whose lives would be transformed, families building wealth, communities with stronger economies, and all those other benefits that we see in this report. And so what would that look like in your county? What we like doing sometimes is asking people, type a number in the chat, take a guess. What would a 10% enrollment increase look like in your county for your high school seniors going to college? Like, how much do you think that would bring back to your communities annually? So you can guess, it's okay. What we'll do is find the actual number and from the Billions research and Dave's, what we call Dave's magic Excel spreadsheet, and get that number back to you in a follow-up communication. So if you increase enrollment in college by 10% in your counties, you can pick a high school, you can pick your whole county, how much do you think that would bring back in those dividends? per year. I only see one taker. Becca's saying 10 billion. I love it. You must live in Miami. So if the whole state is 8.4 billion annually, we're seeing smaller numbers in our counties, but still it's huge. That's okay. Hey, anyone who sticks their neck out there, you get an A plus. So throughout this series, we'll be talking about this and more. We're also going to cover lots of other topics and have guest speakers pop in and share their expertise with you on data, on partnerships, on strategic planning, storytelling, making the case for College Access Network work. And then in May, we'll hopefully mark your calendars and we'll meet up in person for the FCAN Summit. We're going to have reserved some time for us the Wednesday of the summit. And I'm going to update your calendar invite for May and adjust that to that right date and time for that Wednesday in May. So you have all that information, plenty of time to save the date. So look for more information on that in the calendar invite for our in-person meetup, which will also be our grand finale of our LCAN 101 series. It's so wonderful to meet everyone in person, and nothing can replace that in-person relationship building. So today really was designed for foundations. So where did LCANs come from? How have they evolved? What makes them positioned to drive change locally in a way that we could never do sitting at the state level? So let's talk about why networks. What the heck does it mean to take a network approach, and why does FCAN choose to do the work this way? And I really think it's simple. And I like starting with those barriers at the beginning because it's really what students actually face on the ground on their very wayward and complicated path to college success. And so let's think about all the barriers that are on our mind. We've got our affordability barriers. We've got some serious academic preparation gaps. We've got complete and total information deserts. We talk about childcare deserts, and I always want to say it's the same thing in college access. Students and families simply don't know what they don't know. We've got life circumstances, work responsibilities, childcare, and caregiving in general, tremendous housing instability. And underneath it all, we've got students who are starting at different starting lines. So many of you have probably been looking at that kindergarten readiness data that came out this week, where you can look at the kindergarten readiness scores for your elementary schools in your county, and it is sobering. Students are not starting at the same starting line. What other barriers would you add to this list? I could only fit my little 6 icons here, and there are so many more. Healthcare and taking care of those in our families who are also healthcare challenged. And so as we start to grasp the magnitude of issues students and families face, we can see that it goes beyond the responsibility of any one system or person. As much as we like to blame others, when we take a network approach, we really try to de-silo the issue and look at it as a societal problem. And so what does it mean to build a network surrounding students? We think that this is a pretty good definition of how LCANs work across lanes. I'm not going to read it to you. I'll let you digest it. And so what I like about this definition is that we're not creating another program, right? We're not inserting ourselves into a community. We're trying to build an infrastructure so that all the programs in the community are working together. And so I look at it as everyone has their role. The schools work on academic preparation. The college might adjust some of their admissions and placement policies. The financial aid office might coordinate with some community organizations to provide emergency aid and last mile supports. LCANs connect students to paid internships. School counselors might help them see how their education connects to careers, but everyone is working on their piece and they're all working toward the same goal with the same students using the same data to track progress. So what we're not going to do today is like kind of spend a lot of time on the how, like the theory of collective impact. I'll put some of that in the show notes. And then we'll have tons of time to dig into some of that. But I really wanted to show you today what this looks like in practice. I know from experience that everyone just really wants good examples and case studies and things that you can just like hit the ground running. So what does it actually mean to shift from coordination to true collaboration, right? I like this icon of coordination, which is really like, I'm going to tell you what to do. I once had someone in my network who was from the military, and he said, "Can't you just like boss us around? Just tell us what we need to do." And I was like, "Sir, you might like that, but that's not going to work for everybody else. We need to have alignment and we need to really work together in tandem, right? Command and control doesn't work in college access network spaces. So we've kind of talked about the why behind networks, but how do networks actually develop? You know, what does the research tell us about effective collaboration, and what can you kind of start doing soon? I mean, maybe not tomorrow, but definitely in the next 3 months. What I'll tell you, because this is 101, is that no network starts fully formed. You're not going to get from A to Z overnight. They all begin with a few committed partners, some baseline data, and really what it all is a shared concern about student outcomes. So usually it will start with a data point, you know, and then a why. Why is this high school and these particular students in this high school lagging so far behind their peers, right? Who's doing work here and are they seeing success? If so, how do we do more of what's working, right? So over the past decade, we've learned a lot about what distinguishes networks that kind of stall in our Florida, our beautiful state, from networks that grow. And it's okay to stall. It's okay to stall, rethink your strategy, and then begin growing again. And it really comes down to building blocks. So really centering those foundational practices that create the conditions for collaboration to really take root and deepen over time. So I wanted to show you what that journey looks like from our own network. I didn't want to name names, and I'm not going to name specific LCANs, but what I'll tell you is some characteristics that define the network. So when we look at our top performing LCANs, our sort of our tier one, you know, we have 19 LCANs at different stages of development, and I kind of think that's exactly how it should be. Our highest capacity networks have been at this for at least 5 years. They have dedicated backbone organizations. Thank you to the backbones who are the glue of this movement. They have full-time dedicated staff whose only job is to coordinate the network. They have built shared data systems. They are tracking students across institutions. They often have data sharing agreements and have access to the National Student Clearinghouse. They've really moved beyond coordinating individual programs to driving more of that systems level change. So backbone infrastructure, shared measurement, what are we all driving toward? Where are we doing this work? What places in our counties and cities need us the most? And who are the leaders of this movement are kind of what shifts these tier one LCANs from coordinating to truly collaborating. And again, I'm not going to name names, but it's hard to get to the top, right? It takes a lot of resources, a lot of vision, a lot of commitment, and a lot of patience because it doesn't happen overnight. And some of you who have been at this for a while are probably nodding your heads at that one. So the networks that are tier two are more moderate capacity. They've been building alignment for a shorter lifespan. I'd say right around the pandemic, maybe right before. They typically have some part-time or maybe even in-kind backbone support. Let's say you get somebody for 20 hours a week. You're developing shared metrics, I would say, and you're kind of at that transition point where you've had some wins. Yay, we increased FAFSA. We won an award even. You're creating momentum for something deeper, right? And these networks are our gritty networks. They're kind of proving that you don't need $1 million budget to make progress, but you do need the building blocks. You need someone whose job it is to get up, coordinate, convene, and keep everyone together, right? You take the minutes, send out the agendas, build the tables, and you need agreement on what the heck you're measuring and why. What is the chart for your community? What direction are you heading in? So we spend a lot of time supporting LCANs in tier 2 because we think they've got so much potential to get to the next level. And often it does come down to what is that yardstick? What is that case for support? What is your proof point? Kind of what have you done for me lately? And then these are not the baby LCANs. These are the foundation building LCANs. These are the emerging networks. They're bringing partners to the table. They're figuring it out. What data do they have? What data do they need? Maybe they're starting with a single high impact initiative. And often it is a FAFSA challenge because that is the number one door to open to college and career. And they're also along the way building trust because that's what the FAFSA challenge allows you to do. You start with a project and you meet everybody, right? And it feels good to increase those numbers. And you're also building infrastructure to take on something bigger down the road. I'd say most networks start here, and the key is really starting small and getting those early wins so that you can kind of move up that ladder. And so the question here, I think, isn't what tier is better. I wouldn't say that any of these tiers is better. It's just what does each tier need to build capacity and move toward greater impact? And that's ultimately what we want through this local college access network blueprint. And that's also kind of where the science comes in. So as you're looking at these 3 tiers, I'm curious, and you can unmute or pop it in the chat, how would you describe your community's current stage? Are you just starting out? Do you feel like you're building momentum and kind of at that tier 2 space? Or do you feel like, okay, we've been at this for a while. We are rock stars and we are moving this machine forward and we're seeing results in our data. And one other note here, you can be that tier 1 and very easily go back to being a tier 2 with just a couple leadership changes. And that happens too all the time in our network. One of our LCANs has frankly stopped talking to their superintendent because they've had 8 in 4 years, right? So just because you're at one tier one day doesn't mean the next year you might kind of struggle a little. And so that's kind of what FCANs, how we support the LCANs with that honesty and transparency. And thank you for putting a couple comments in the chat. So we've looked a little bit about how networks develop, the building blocks that create capacity. And so let's talk about why this matters. And I had like a million things I could say for this slide, but I only picked three things. It's such a gift to be able to do network convening and capacity building and alignment work versus running a program. And so why? And I have drunk this Kool-Aid and I will take this to my grave. Once you go network, you don't really go back. And so let me talk to you about the network advantage. So this first icon is really getting at seeing the whole picture. And for us, it's seeing the whole student, right? Not just their college application essay or their FAFSA form or their GPA, but the full journey, really cradle to career. But often our space is middle school through credential completion and into careers. So when you can see where students are kind of getting stuck in the system, you can do something about it. And that's not really running a program. And so that's really what makes network special and different than just running a program. And chime in here if anyone's like, snap, 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 or you got that totally wrong. Um, but this is sort of my 30,000 foot view about the network advantage, right? The second one I think is a bridge, but also working across lanes. We talked about how different systems can't solve for these problems we're talking about. High school can't solve college affordability. College can't fix academic preparation gaps. And the community organizations around us can't change admissions policies. But together, networks can influence. They can hold their thumb to the problem, they can convene people in power, and they can address these issues. And I really have seen over the years these networks plugging gaps and bringing attention to issues that other partners can't, right? They don't have that microphone. And I love this, not a bully pulpit, but a way to champion what's actually happening to students and putting students at the center rather than just maybe our program. And by doing these things, we can see population level change. We can really move the needle at scale. We're not just helping the 50 students in our program who are lucky enough to be enrolled in our very amazing and special boutique program. We're not just serving families who already know how to walk in the door and ask for help. We can actually target our work and place our work in communities and zip codes that need us the most and shift college going rates. We can shift completion rates and we can build attainment rates for our entire community. So how does this sound to all of you? What does this look like in practice? This is kind of what gets us excited at LCAN is like all power is local. And when we can get communities organized and looking at this critical work, we really see so much potential. It's not saying that you're never going to do a program. Often programs are how you do it, and you can do demonstration projects that influence the systems. Like we've seen many LCANs do, they're also very fundable and can fund the convening and capacity work. It's not saying you can't ever do a program, but it's saying that you can that LCANs are both and. We can do targeted programmatic work, but it's toward the whole. And what we ultimately want to do is shift those conditions for all students. We also see across our network and state working at critical transition moments. So again, this is work that no single program is ever doing in any community, right? Who's handling these transitions between 8th grade and 9th grade, right? Between senior year and that first day on campus. In that critical first 6 weeks of the first semester when we see tremendous stop out. LCANs are handling these transitions through credential completion. And really by shining a light on the data, LCANs can decide which piece of the puzzle they want to focus their resources on. And I think it would be valuable to kind of walk through this and look at what does LCAN work look like at each of these transition moments. There are some people who want to start in elementary school. That is completely justified. We know, especially looking at some of the CFE data, that those upper elementary school years really matter in middle school acceleration placement. But we can't do it all. And the more we spread ourselves across the grades, the more we're straining, what we're able to see in terms of a result, right? You're not going to see that middle school result for 6 or 7 years. So let's try to focus on what we can change and where our champions are. So controversial, but I'm starting in middle school. And in middle school, we're really seeing networks coordinating and building that college awareness, especially across trusted messengers and within families. So this is where we're seeing libraries and churches and community centers be places where we can build and embed college-going messages. Networks here can also connect students to near peers and early scholarship access. This is where we see Take Stock in Children, surface and parallel programs that sort of build this expectation that you are college material. And here's a whole world waiting to support you as you build your portfolio to get there. So a lot of middle school is awareness and exposure and starting to build that message that might be completely new to them and their families. So we're doing culturally appropriate messaging in different settings, in different languages. And if anyone is doing middle school work and wants to add to this list, because originally I had like 6 things on here and I boiled the ocean to 2. So we would love to hear your ideas about middle school network building. And the question is always like, what can networks do? Right? There's a lot of things that we want our systems to do, but what can the community convener do as sort of the sniff test for this work? In high school, of course, we blow the roof off of college access, right? That's where the push comes to shove. And we see networks doing all kinds of amazing things every single day. Um, and here I have just a few. Embedding these talented, highly trained college advisors who are dedicated staff. They're not counselors handling 500 students. These are dedicated, trained people focused solely on college access. Often funded by and placed by community partners inside schools, often in college and career centers, but they don't have to be. We're also seeing, this is where our FAFSA challenge sits, or FAFSA Plus, which is FAFSA completion assistance plus navigation support for all of the many options in college and career pathways. Bringing together schools, financial aid offices, having those mega FAFSA events in your high schools, training volunteers, your bank volunteers, your army of after school centers, helping students complete that form on a one-on-one basis. And we know that that is important because it can increase enrollment by upwards of 90%. And networks coordinate these career pathways. And FCAN will be doing a lot more on this career pathway space in the future, because that's really the future for first gen and low income students. They really need to see, to the point made in the chat earlier, they don't want to have delayed gratification. Often they need jobs now. And so what can we do with dual enrollment, with industry credentials, with employer partnerships to get students to real jobs with credentials? So doing harder work in the high school level and more targeted work for our population that is furthest behind. I think the next space would be obviously the transition to college. So we have LCANs working on summer melt prevention. And this is really where we lose the most students. Research shows we lose the most students between high school graduation and that first day on the college campus. And we're seeing our LCANs really tackle summer melt in pretty creative ways. We've got some that are doing text campaigns, lots of personalized outreach. We've got State College and LCAN boot camps where you can sign up for everything that you need all in one day, no wrong door. We'll get your vaccinations taken care of, right? And all of these efforts can reduce summer melt by 10 to 15%. It obviously requires a lot of coordination between schools and colleges. And it's the perfect space for LCANs because no one owns summer melt. LCANs are also coordinating that first year proactive check-in, especially those that are doing intensive work in high school. Following those students to that first semester of that first year, especially those first 3 weeks of college where students are most vulnerable, is another transition point for LCANs. What do we have next here? College and completion. Some of the hardest work, right? We think we've made it. We did it. We checked middle school. We did high school. We took them through summer. And now it's like, oh my goodness, why are so many leaving, right? Why are they leaving their senior year? So finally, college and college completion. This is where all the pieces have to work together. And what are the high impact practices here? Well, there are a lot of them, and I'm not even going to talk about all of them out loud, and I'll send this out in the recap. We only really have time to talk about a couple on the screen. Definitely emergency aid, and we're seeing increasing will and also growing data about students needing support to get through a crisis. And it's not a lot of money. We're talking about small amounts delivered in a really short, rapid response time frame. Students don't want to wait 6 months for an emergency. 48 hours when a car breaks down or a family crisis hits. We're also seeing these 15 to finish campaigns take off, meaning students who take 15 credits per semester instead of 12 complete in half the time. Especially, again, we're talking about our first gen low income students for the most part. So 15 to finish is really normalizing full-time enrollment through that great relationship building with their advisor and financial support. And then these cohort models with matched mentors. A lot of you are doing mentorship work and mentorship pairing. What this does is take that same model through completion. And we see this on a lot of our college campuses with our first gen centers. And it really works. And it's a great space for LCANs. And research shows it can double that 3-year graduation rate. So that's a lot. And I think we could really gush on evidence-based practices. And we do have a whole session designed to tease out what works in our college access network space, where we're not really running programs, we're handling transitions and stepping stones. But what I wanted to do was open up some space for some reflection. And I'd love to have some folks unmute and really talk to us about what's happening in your network, in your collaborative that's making or could make a difference in your community. Did you see something in this list of evidence-based practices that you feel like you're doing or want to do and maybe could run with it? And then the second prompt is sort of what landed for you today of that full marathon run through our state and LCAN world, kind of what resonated most with where your community is right now. So I'm going to pass the mic to whoever wants to chat or unmute and speak first. Oh, I just saw Megan's preach after coming from running programs. Yes. A lot of us are former program operators. Not saying this is easier, but it is different. Maybe I could pick on somebody for some of my shy folks. How about maybe Leah with Levy County, or Mark with DeSoto County, as some of our newer and emerging college access network friends. What are you thinking about this run through Florida and network work?
I'll start. I'm not shy, so I was referring to some of the other organizations that have been doing it longer. So as some of you know, we just got started. And United Way Suncoast, we are the backbone for the new DeSoto LCAN. So we are at the beginning stages, and our focus will be on FAFSA, increasing our FAFSA completion rate. And we have our first workshop coming up in November next month. But we're, as you know, bringing all the stakeholders together so we can work collaboratively on that goal through the FAFSA challenge and to increase those numbers in DeSoto. And obviously, this is the first time doing it, and this has been a work that's been attempted previously. But I think the good thing about it is working collaboratively and using data and the support of FCAN is going to be really helpful to really making, I believe, good strides for that community. So I'm really excited about it, but I know obviously there's going to be uh, some gains, but also there's going to be some challenges too, because we're going to, keep people motivated and doing it and making sure everyone does their part, and it's not just United Way Suncoast, because we're the convener. We're not. We don't want to be doing the work for the community, but I believe we're making a good start, and I want to thank FCAN for all the work they've done to get us to this point.
Yeah, you said a lot there, Mark, and very wise. That's pretty much the biggest headline is that you're not taking on the work for the community, you're coordinating the community. But it's so hard to draw that line. And a lot of us have learned the hard way about how not to do that. I'm not going to call anybody out right here, but I've made that mistake in taking on too much when I was at my former LCAN. And so it's definitely a slippery slope. You want to be aggressive, you want to be proactive, you don't want students to fall behind. But then the more work you take on as the LCAN leader, the less responsibility you're sharing with your partners who may outlast you. So it's definitely something that we're going to focus on this series and talking about some pretty painful lessons learned. We've seen an LCAN leader leave and have the whole LCAN disappear. And that is what we don't want to do moving forward. So thank you for sticking your neck out and sharing. Leah, I did call on you just because you are doing so much thinking around this work. And trying to be really intentional about the coalition you're building and like kind of like what the problem is that you want to solve. If there's anything that stood out to you in these slides or anything you want to correct, I would love to know. Or anyone from Levy.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely in Levy County want to increase our college, not just CF, but the college application numbers in with the Levy County high school graduates. In addition to financial aid applications, and Becca, please feel free to jump in, or Brittany, because they're both on here and they're um, but yeah, just really what our main goal is to get that sense of collaboration where we are helping each other more and not getting in each other's way and not competing with each other in the county. I'm in a very rural county, probably more rural than anybody else on this call, in Levy County. So, but we are also very spread out. So it's, we have the schools do things. We go into the schools and do things like application sessions and FAFSA sessions. And then there are some organizations that also do some things. So just really getting on that same, page, on the same page, and working and helping each other instead of, competing with each other or getting in each other's way. And giving those same messages to students, and talking about all the scholarships that are available and just having everything like in one place and everybody's, giving the same messages.
Right. It sounds
that
so
was
simple,
a little
but
long-winded.
no, that was great. And I think the devil's in the details, right? It sounds simple, but yet why isn't it done? It turns out it's actually not that simple to put the right
No,
information in the right student's hands at the right moment is incredibly
right.
difficult. And it's why we see persistent gaps in outcomes. So no, I think you're really hitting the nail on the head. The challenge with some of our newer LCANs, and if we're looking at that gap map, it's really who is the convener and who carries this mantle. Across the network, we've got chambers of commerce, we have community foundations, We've got United Ways stepping up in a big way. And we have education foundations. We have two standalone LCANs that are 501c3 nonprofits, and a lot of room for innovation in some of our newer counties. So who kind of is doing the work and carrying the work, I think, is important. And Mark in DeSoto was able to be backboned under the United Way Suncoast. Um, and we have a lot of education foundations across Florida, but right now only two. I'm looking at Megan because I'm not counting the Education Foundation and Collier County Champions for Learning right now as a backbone because they're in transition. But we did have three education foundations backboning LCANs, and I would comfortably say we have two now in Broward and in Sarasota. So really having those leaders and those champions who see their space going back to that pipeline of middle school to completion, they see the value of the work and that no one else is doing this. We're not duplicating. Our gaps are so big because no one's paying attention to the gaps. And so it's the perfect space for network building, but you really do need leadership to see that. So Melissa, welcome. I love your
Thank
perspective.
you.
You're like, I was doing the work, and now you're going to be and are leading the work over in Jacksonville. Do you want to tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about that?
sure. Actually, I that's what is resonating with me the most so far in our session is just everything you're talking about and seeing how far EarnUp has come. I started when EarnUp started. I remember sitting at the meeting around the table with all the stakeholders, just talking about what are we going to call this, and develop the EarnUp name and the logo and everything else. And so now I was at a state college at the time, and I was there for about 15 years and worked with my predecessor at the chamber when she was in the role I'm taking now. And so to now be at EarnUp at Jax USA in the coordination role and senior director of talent development, um, and seeing how much has been done now, everything, all the work is just part of what everyone is involved in, all the stakeholders. Back when we started, it was just something else we were having to do, another initiative. And no one really knew exactly what was going to happen with it, and if all the heavy lifting and the work was going to amount to us meeting those collective goals that we were identifying. Now, I think it's about 10 years. It has to be around that period of time. Uh, I'm seeing that all of the stakeholders are very invested, and everyone sees the collaborative as just part of their role, as part of what they do. And I don't, and in talking with my colleagues that I worked with back then, that I'm now working again with in this role, they're at the table and they can't imagine not being at the table. So it really has done a lot for our region in Northeast Florida. I just see that anecdotally just in the short time I'm in this position.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that you're on LCAM 101 and you're sort of capturing the full breadth of what that means. It doesn't mean that you're 101 level. You're a new leader in a familiar space and willing to kind of
Right?
pivot and change as the conditions change and really serve your students and families live. And I love,
Absolutely.
I can't wait to dive into all of that with you guys in a little bit. Um, Megan, I don't want to pick on you. We just have a lot of love in our network for Future Ready Collier, and the wonderful LCAN that they've been in the past. And we're excited to maybe resurrect some of those goodies moving forward and welcoming you to this network.
Thank you. Yes, I am excited. Like I said in the chat, I have been in the running of programs for many years in the town of Immokalee and developing college access programs there. And then moving to the CEO role of the Boys and Girls Club for the past 10 years. And so it's it's definitely different to be in a network space. And in our county, I think we're very lucky to have a lot of partners who, even though Future Ready has taken kind of a pause for about a year, are all really committed. It's just trying to figure out how to wrangle everyone who's doing great work into some common denominators and seeing past individual organizations into kind of the collective we. But everyone is still at the table and still wants to be. So I think it's exciting for our county and for our kids.
That's a brilliant way to capture it. And they're really lucky to have found you. Our very own Dave Sobush, our Director of Research and Policy, has gone down to Naples quite a few times and spoken to your group and tried to bridge that cradle to career, bring that perspective in, because I know your community is super passionate about early learning. And
Right.
we have quite a few LCANs who are cradle to career. We, of course, have an agenda of college access, but we know the early years matter too. And Dave has really great insights into what's happening in Collier County.
And not only that, thank you, Kim. I presented there the day of the referendum, which passed. So you're welcome.
That's amazing. Thank you. He just dropped the mic. Thank you, Dave. And if we haven't come to your community yet, that is one of our offerings is let us show up for you. We can be behind the scenes, we can be in front of the scene, whatever you need are the FCAN staff. And we have Sarah Foster on here too, has been doing quite a lot of advocacy over this past summer with our LCANs. There is nothing we love more than doing this work on the ground for you and with you. So consider us your partner and ally in this work. And I cannot believe how quickly that went. And I think we were able to pass the mic around to most of you on this call. So I was thinking of, I don't want to like do homework or anything like that, but maybe we could do an apply one thing. What's one thing we can do before November? And then if it's just having a conversation, maybe pulling some of the FCAN team onto a call with you and your partners. Email me if you'd like that. We've got office hours. You can also invite someone on your team who maybe needs to hear some of this message or get inspired themselves to join our next call. These are open for you. And by joining the LCAN series, you get access to the whole package. So you can come on. We have on-ramps for every month. We're big believers in on-ramps. So we've created a Dropbox for you where you can kind of catch up and learn as you go. So our promise is to keep those resources active for you and to get those notes in your inbox by next week. And just a sneak peek, it's kind of an oxymoron to say that we're doing systems work and network level, but we're also building partnerships. I've always thought that this was such a huge contradiction because the partnerships are so time intensive. But so much of this work depends on relationships and partnerships, and you cannot shortcut relationships. So I wanted to dedicate session 2 to forming effective partnerships that stand on the test of time and kind of like what does that mean from agenda design of your meetings to follow up in like the in-between space. How you have a great meeting, fine, what happens next, right? So we're going to spend a solid amount of time on building partnerships and bringing in lots of wisdom and resources and tools for you. And we've got a great guest speaker who will be leading some of that session next month. And that will be the Thursday before Thanksgiving. So that should be adjusted on your calendar. Likewise for December, we are not meeting on Christmas Day. I moved that to the week before. That was probably my most frequently asked question from all of you. Like, we're not meeting on the holidays. No. And we're going to be talking about the 2 things that really matter with LCANs is data and stories. So we're going to be talking all about case making in session 3. So just a little sneak peek about what's ahead. I cannot believe that went by so fast. What I'm going to do is just do our exit poll before I let you go. If you could fill out some session feedback for me so I can make these sessions the best they can be for you, worth your time, that would be wonderful. And then I'll close the audio recording and just hang on for anyone who wants to stay on. But no pressure. I understand we have busy lives. And if you have to go, you have to go. And just know that I will follow up with you. And I thank you all so much for joining.